It's time to accelerate. Hey friends, this is Andy. Welcome to episode 645 of Accelerate, the sales podcast of record. I am honored to be joined by my guest today on Accelerate. Joining me is Brandon Bruce. Brandon is COO and Co-founder at Cirrus Insight. In this episode, Brandon is going to share his story of riding a 508-mile endurance bike ride through the Mojave Desert and Death Valley. And then we're going to talk about how sales is like an endurance sport and how the way you need to mentally and physically prepare yourself for long, complex sales share certain aspects with endurance sports. You know, the grit, the resilience, character, values. I mean, you need to be able to pick yourself up after you fall because inevitably it will happen. And when your mind is telling you have to give up and quit, you then have to suck it up and persist. And so we'll talk about how a big part of that is knowing what you stand for in life and in business. So make sure you stick around, check this out. If you'd like to see show notes for this episode, go to andypaul.com/645. Now, friends, if you're a top performer in your current sales role and you're looking for a fresh challenge to take your career to the next level, then CenturyLink should be at the top of your list because with its recent acquisition of Level 3, the new CenturyLink is a world leader in providing cloud security, real-time communications, and managed services. And so if you want the excitement, challenge, and rewards that come from selling industry-leading services to the enterprise, then visit CenturyLink.com/accelerate and join their talent community. That's CenturyLink.com/accelerate. Also, before I talk with Brandon, let me share with you that the second edition of the Sales Leadership Accelerated Mastermind for SaaS sales leaders kicks off on April 24th. That's SaaS Slam for short. And if you remember, we had our first one back in December. Participation at SaaS Slam is limited to founders and CEOs, chief revenue officers, and VPs of sales of high-growth SaaS startups only. Now, we call it the Accelerated Mastermind because in just 2 days, you'll become better prepared to transform how you sell, how you scale, and how you develop the capabilities of your team to crush your goals. Past participants include companies such as AdRoll, Adobe, MarketStar, G2 Crowd, TalkDesk, and many others. And our corporate partners providing support for Slam are Storm Ventures, Outreach, Chorus, G2 Crowd, and Membrane. So for more information and to apply for your place at SaaS Slam, go to www.saasslam.com. Let me say that again. That's SaaSlam.com/event1, the number one. And again, that's SaaSslam.com/event1. All right, let's get to it with Brandon. Brandon, welcome to Accelerate.
Thanks for having me, Andy. I appreciate it.
Hey, it's great to talk to you. So, open the show with the standard question for all my guests, and that is, in your opinion, what's the single biggest challenge facing sales reps today?
See, I thought the question was going to be, how tall am I? Because when I show up to a sales event, that's the first question I get since I'm about 6'8". So people want to know, how tall are you and do you play basketball and so forth. But if we back up and say, what's the biggest challenge in sales today? I think it's adapting to the fact that the things that have worked or seem to have worked for several years have now diminishing returns. Some of them are not working, or at least not working the way that they used to. So I think it's fair to say, even going back 10 years, but even 5 years ago, sending out lots and lots of emails to, the biggest mailing list was winning. Mm-hmm. So if you could get a lot of people and send them all email, you could do pretty well. Now it's diminishing returns. I mean, the emails have to be so much better, so much more intriguing, so much more personalized, and you've really got to focus on getting that strong opt-in list versus just the biggest list wins. Similarly on phone calls, it's just so hard to reach people now, to not get voicemail, to get folks to call you back, to have an interesting enough pitch that people want to engage. And so, this is a kind of an overarching big challenge. It's figuring out the mechanisms where you can actually get in touch with people and have a conversation. Because without the conversation, there's no relationship to build. So it's figuring out how to get in touch by email, by phone, on LinkedIn, through postal mail, by showing up in person, some combination of those things, figuring out that right combo for the right prospect so that you can actually start the process.
Well, let me ask the question then. So instead of framing it as what's not working in sales, so let's talk about what is working in sales.
I think what we found recently and over the past couple of years that has worked the best for us is simply making it easy for the customer to do business with us. So an example of that would be, rather than spending an inordinate amount of time sending out emails to try to get people to attend a webinar, trying to get people to meet with us, hey, would you be willing to meet? Hey, I'd love to show you a demo, et cetera. Instead, simply sharing our calendar on the website. This is our calendar. This is all of our availability. And if you'd like to meet with us, choose a time of your convenience. We will automatically send you an invite that has, the Zoom meeting or the GoToMeeting or the conference dial-in number on it. And we will call you at the appointed time, and we will show you, what our product does. That seems to work really well, and it seems to align with some of the stats that we've seen over the last couple of years that says a lot of customers have already done a substantial amount of research before engaging in a conversation with a company, right? So they've already been to the website, they've already watched some videos, they've downloaded some white papers. Now they've got a question, or now they're sort of curious to see, hey, is anyone there? Is anyone minding the store? Can I get in touch with you? And so making that part easy has been great for us. That's how we schedule most of our demos with customers, is they're saying, this is the date and time I want, we'll see you there. And it totally eliminates the back and forth of, hey, when do you want to meet? Tuesday. Now Tuesday's out now. That just got booked up. And what time zone are you in? And we use our own software for this, Cirrus Insight, to do the bookings. But there's lots of options out there for just making it easy for people to schedule time with us. Because time is the big commodity that all of us run out of. And so it's making it easy for saying to the customer, we've got time if you want it, and letting them choose what time works for them.
So if people go to Cirrus Insight website, they'll see a calendar.
Yeah, they say, if you want to book a demo, you click through, you'll see our calendar. You choose the time you want, and we will make sure that we are in touch with you at the appointed date and time. And you can write back and say, hey, I'd rather have, I'm going to be, driving in my car. I'd rather just have a phone call instead. Great. We'll make that happen. So it's giving the customer some power to control. This is when I want to see it. This is what I want to see. This is how I want to see it. And we're saying, no problem. We'll see you there.
Oh, I like that. Yeah, I just went to your website to schedule a demo.
There you go. Yeah, you test out.
Yeah. No, that's very cool. So then there's a great example for people listening to this is something that's so simple to do, to make it so easy for people to get in touch with you. And, there's some pushback. People say, they don't like the links in emails, right? When you say, here's my Calendly link, or here's my Schedule Once link, or Acuity, or whatever you use, click on it, because they think, oh, you're putting it onto the customer to schedule. But this is something somebody's visiting your website. This is extremely simple to do. I'm sure it aggregates from your SDR team or whomever is the front line for you, and simple, easy.
Yeah, and I think to your point, the pushback is fair. And in a lot of the examples that I've seen, whether it's emails that we're writing to send out to our prospects and customers, or emails that I've received, there's a way that sometimes it's written where it does look like you're putting it on the customer. Hey, why don't you click this link and schedule time with me, right? And that's kind of one vibe. And then the other is more of a, hey, for your convenience.
Yeah.
If there's any time you have in the next 2 weeks that you want to do it, I will make sure that I or someone on my team is there for you. And that's just you get to the same result, but the journey is a lot friendlier and a lot more, hey, we're here for you when you want us to be, versus why don't you go use my tool that I've set up that I can get a demo from you?
Exactly.
Right? It's a different vibe.
Yeah. And to your point, it's really a matter of wording. Right? I mean, we tend to. I think this is something that is, from, at least in my mind, is problematic. Is I think certainly with newer generation in sales, and this is not meant to be a jibe at millennials. It's across society. We see this is people think words don't matter as much, and words matter. Something simple like that is a 180-degree difference in customer experience and customer perception.
So I was on an in-person panel earlier this week, and the question got asked from the audience, hey, what skills are you looking for that seem to be lacking? In other words, where's the gap in supply demand in the marketplace? I think the expected answer was, we need to find more candidates with expertise in the STEM disciplines, right? We need more folks with coding acuity. and so forth. I think that was the anticipated answer. That was the setup. But the person up on the panel answered and said, what we really struggle to find is people who can write. Across any of our positions, we need people that can, not just put words down, but connect words so that they make sense, and so that they're readable, digestible, so that it puts our best, foot forward out to our customers and partners and other constituents. And then the audience member said, really, that's a gap. And the panelist said, absolutely. Like, we are really struggling to find folks that are, strong, confident writers. And when we find one, we try to get them right away. So I think your point is exactly right. Words matter, and the way that we use them, whether on a phone call or in an email or when we show up to do a live presentation, goes a long way to communicating to the customer. Are we professional? Are we going to take care of them throughout the relationship? Do we kind of have our act together? We know what we're talking about. And in just this example, it matters how it's phrased to, I want to get a meeting from you versus I want to meet with you if you want to meet with me. And if so, I want to do it at your convenience.
Right.
And it's a much different approach.
And you could use those words and put the same link on it. And I said the perception is 180 degrees different.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, and so back to this panel thing, the answer, I think that's an intriguing answer. And I love the fact that someone brought that up. To me, the writing is part of, sort of a broader category, which is, and I've, been working with clients on this, is want people that have human skills. There's not just writing. It's people have a sense of what they stand for. People with character. I mean, I'm hearing this more and more. People with, character, that have values that support, what they stand for, who they are as a person, and so on, that you can sense. And
yeah, we had a group of teachers visit our office this past year. We probably had 24, elementary through middle through high school. And they just kind of wanted to see, how does this software company operate? Could be interesting. Maybe we can share a few things back to our classes with students. And so again, my expectation was they really wanted to spend time in the lab, right? Let's sit with people that are for a living, that are creating, videos, they're producers. At the end of the day, when I said, look, I hope your time here has been useful. Are there takeaways that you can use, or do you need more information from us? And they said, oh, what was most useful is just spending time with the team, listening to how they talk with customers on the phone, seeing how you guys do the screen shares, how you respond by email. Like, we're really most interested in the soft skills and communicating those to our students versus the hard skills of you need to be proficient in the following office software. And you need to learn how to do some front-end coding. And it's best to have a working knowledge of HTML. They were far more interested. 100% of the feedback came back of, oh, this was really interesting on the soft skill side. We're going to try to communicate that back to our students so that they can practice that. And that's the most important thing they can take coming out of school. Which, I just thought that was particularly interesting because there's been very much a focus on hard skills, technical skills, that there's a gap there, and no disputing that. But the pendulum can swing sometimes too far, where it's like, let's just teach everybody technical skills. And what we're left with, a lot of technical skills, but not necessarily, hey, let's all collaborate and work together. Let's solve problems. Let's go out and be able to sell. Once we've created a technical solution, how do we connect with other people and share with them what we've built? And that's where those quote unquote soft skills come in.
Yeah, well, I'd say that the shortage of training on soft skills is not entirely due to the fact we're producing more technically trained people, but even in the softer disciplines at the undergraduate level, whether it's liberal arts, like I came through, that's not being prepared there. People aren't being adequately prepared in those majors either, and that's why I always like when I have guests on the show that might make a comment about we got these generational issues and so on. I'll say, well, yeah, but go to a sales team that's well trained, that's really operating, and you're going to see young people who are very skilled at the interpersonal. And so it's just, I think, how do we train people? I think that's one of the things. I think one of the things that's a little different with the newer generation is there's been less emphasis placed on that somehow through their socialization. So when they come into the workplace, I think employers have a bigger task to start inculcating some of the values and other things in the employees than they might have had, 1 or 2 generations ago.
Yeah, and I've had the opportunity. We're very close to both Maryville College and the University of Tennessee, and I've had a chance to go in and talk with some undergraduate classes as well as some of the business school classes at University of Tennessee. And one of the interesting pieces of feedback is on the curriculum side. There's often several courses in marketing, right? Let's talk about the 4 Ps and so forth. And then there's the financial classes. So you learn how to create your balance sheet and P&L statement,
sure,
et cetera, and run cash flow. But some of the students and the teachers, the professors, came and said, we really like to hear from you about sales because we don't have any classes in sales. And I thought that's so interesting. So perhaps there's this larger kind of cart before the horse national conversation about, hey, if you're studying business at any level, whether undergraduate or as part of business school or graduate degree that touches business in any way, might we want to include some teaching just about sales, some practicing of doing the sales? Because interestingly, without some sales, marketing is not going to last too long, and you're really never going to have the chance to flex your financial knowledge because there's no money to manage. And so it's interesting to come out with all these skills, but then when it comes to actually doing the work of business, you almost have to start again from scratch in your first job and try to figure out, okay, well, how do I sell this thing? Like I have a sense of how to take it to market. I have a sense of how to manage the money once we make it, but how do we actually make the money? Big question mark.
Yeah.
I'd like to see that more. I'd like to see sales at the forefront.
As would I. And there are more undergraduate institutions that are offering some degree programs, some certificate programs, within the business major on sales. I mean, it's happening slowly, but surely. But I think one of the things that's working against it, and I think this is, somewhat ironic, is that the rise of digital marketing and the way degree it's become pervasive is it's sort of created this sense in a lot of people's minds that, well, geez, all I need to do is, put up a website. You laugh because, you could say people, this is what you did, but you guys didn't. You guys went out and actually sold stuff. Put up a website and we're going to send a bunch of emails and, we'll do some pay-per-click ads and so on and generate some traffic, and that's sales. And it's I find especially in the small business arena, is it's very seductive for a lot of business owners who aren't comfortable with the idea of selling anyway, to say, well, yeah, we don't really have to sell, we just have to market.
Absolutely. Well, and we've seen a number of companies have some success with that, but I suspect, based on most of my conversations with small business owners and founders, that for most of us, that's not the way it is. So I've heard folks that will say, well, we've been in the lab for a couple years building our whatever in our area, at least our software, our app, and so we've got it pretty close. It's almost just right, and then all we got to do is put the website up, and we'll just kind of hire a couple salespeople, and we'll just go out and sell it. But it's an afterthought. It's like, well, now that we've done this really hard product, we'll just take it to market, and then the rest will just fall into place as things do. And it's like, we all know some of the great success stories of the companies that just have brilliant engineers, and then the product just jumps off the shelves, right? It's more bought than sold. Great. But I'd say for the vast majority of us, that's not the case, right? There's a lot of great products out there that never really find a home because they're not fully taken to market in a way which is, best foot forward, and let's go talk to customers and get in a feedback loop and improve it and so forth. And I think that's a mistake. It is seductive, and there's a reason we would call it seductive, is because you're kind of being seduced into this idea that if you load up enough in your AdWords account and do some other basic digital marketing, that customers will trip over themselves to get in the door. Not often the case in my experience, at least.
Yeah, I had a guest on the show 4 or 5 months ago who published a book. He runs ironically, a digital marketing agency, but he has written this book, sort of I don't want to call it a rant, but a very strongly worded book. I think it's called Digital Snake Oil Salesman, but basically saying, in my industry, in digital marketing, there's all these promises that, are snake oil. And the number one promise is that, you just do the marketing. You don't actually have to sell. And
right.
Yeah, it doesn't work out very well for most people. So I was going to ask you, I mean, you do some endurance athletic events. And I want to sort of dig into that because actually there's a connection to sales as we get through it. But so tell us what you did. You rode the Badwater 508?
Yeah, so it was called at the time the Furnace Creek 508. Furnace Creek is a real small area. It's got a little tiny hotel and gas station out in the middle of Death Valley.
Yeah.
And so the 508 is so named because it's a 508-mile single stage bicycle race, meaning you don't bike 100 miles and then stop for a break or go to sleep overnight. You just bike the 508 miles as fast as you can, and through the desert. And it's relatively hot. It was in October. This was many years ago. This was in 2002 when I did this race. It was in October, and it still got into the hundreds when we were in Death Valley overnight. And a ton of fun. And I had done a lot of centuries, 100-mile rides, and a whole circuit 200-mile rides. I probably did 10 or so of those leading up to it. So I'd gotten fit. But then, to go out and have this big experience where I was out there for, like you remember some of your old test scores, I was out there 35 hours and 7 minutes, which, as an aside, included a 17-minute nap. Why would someone take a nap during a race? Well, I started to hallucinate in the desert, which happens sometimes if you run out of fluid and salts. So I needed to take a little break. And as luck would have it, I bolted about 5 or 6 Red Bulls, fell right asleep, and then woke up 17 minutes later and was like, man, we better get going. This is a race. And it worked out well.
That's how long it took for the caffeine to...
That's how long it took for it to jolt me back awake.
Jolt you back awake, right.
But I went to sleep when it was still dark. And then when I woke up, the sun had risen. And I didn't know this at the time, but I came to find out that that's actually a good strategy. If you need to stay up all night to do something, whether it's work or do a bike race or something else, it's useful to close your eyes when it's still dark, open them again after the sun has risen, and your body is somewhat tricked into thinking, well, I went to sleep at night and now I'm getting up in the morning. That's a normal thing to do. I must be okay. I wouldn't say that that's a sustainable practice. Like you can't sleep for 2 minutes a day just by closing your eyes and opening them when it gets bright. But I think it did help with my energy that day, allowed me to finish the race.
So the rough route of the race, because Death Valley is not 508 miles long. So was there a loop or something?
It was point to point. So we started on, one side of the valley, in a hotel that started early in the morning, and we start biking, wind our way through Mojave, get up in Death Valley, go through the valley overnight, and then come back through. We don't make a full loop, but it ended near a marine base at 29 Palms. For those familiar with California geography. So we ended at 29 Palms, and there's a little finish line there, and it was a great experience. I think I finished in 5th place or something like that. So there was super fast folks that finished hours before I did, but I gotten fit. It was a great opportunity just to get out and test myself. My brother came along. My girlfriend at the time, now my wife, came. So they were my support vehicle, kind of keeping me alive, right? Keeping fluids going. Mm-hmm. And to the point earlier, there is an analogy in some respects to business and into sales, because I think in a technical world, and we make software, progress is usually defined in terms of sprints, literally, right?
Yeah,
we're in sprint number 4 of 2018, and this is our start date, this is our end date, and it's an agile Scrum process, and but business, I think, oftentimes is better viewed as an endurance sport. Necessarily, there are some break points where you can make and break a company, but for most of us, there's a lot of just staying power associated with it. How do you go through the process? How do you navigate a sale that might take a year to close? How do you build a business up over the course of a decade so that it has staying power, so that it's got a strong foundation? And that means, you keep yourself buoyed up. You don't get too high or too low, and you just keep working on that problem, keep chipping away at it. And that's how the bike race was, or for anyone that, goes out and runs marathons or does any sort of event that takes multiple hours. you kind of got to break it into pieces and be willing to go through it a little bit. So halfway through, you might be thinking, I don't know why I signed up for this. Maybe I shouldn't be doing this. But if you push through that point and finish, you feel great about it. And all the worries and all the hurt during the race disappears. And then in your mind, you're thinking, maybe I should do this again someday. And so it's interesting how that happens. You can push through a lot of those barriers and end up with a great experience.
Yeah, I mean, you use the words, consistency and persistence and sticking to it and so on. I phrase it a little bit differently, which is that, I see it as a matter of character and preparation. It's at the moments when, halfway through you're thinking, why the heck am I doing this? It's your character that gets you through. It's your preparation that gets you through, right? And I to me, persistence and resilience are character traits. And we spoke about this a little bit earlier, but it's something I think that's not emphasized enough in our profession is the importance of character, because that's how people perceive us when they first meet us, as our character. And so I think I know the big words, circulating in the education community these days is grit, right? So teachers are very interested in trying to communicate and to the extent possible teach students grit, meaning you might get the right answer, you might not, but if you don't, are you willing to demonstrate your character by sticking with the problem, working through it, and hopefully coming out the other side with an answer, or at least you've given a great effort trying. And preparation was a huge part of it. I mean, I knew that I was going to have to bike through the night, and a lot of my prior races in preparation had early morning starts. So you might do 2-3 hours before the sun rose, but I hadn't had any events that really went past sunset. So knowing that, I went out with my brother into the hills behind Ojai, California, and, biked for 3 or 4 hours at night just to make sure I felt comfortable doing that. 'Cause biking at night is just a little bit different. You got to get used to the headlights behind you and handling yourself in the dark. So, it was important to do that. And then someone had told me, and so, we all choose what we take on faith, but someone had told me, you can always go twice as far as you've gone. And, logically, I was like, well, that's not true. It's an N+1 problem, right? This is mathematically kind of one of those fun little mind tricks. But I was like, for the purpose of the 508, let's stipulate that that's true. Therefore, I should at least have gone, 250 miles or so in order to prepare for the race. And I'd done lots of 200s, but I hadn't done the 250. So I went out one day and just decided I was going to do that. So I went from Santa Barbara and biked down through Long Beach to the Seal Beach area, and then turned around and came back. And in the course of doing that, just by myself and being committed to it, did give me a good shot of confidence going into the race, where it's like, well, I've done half of it, and this random person told me you can always go twice as far, and so I must be able to do it. I'm sure this is of no interest at all to people on the East Coast, but did you stick on the one the whole way?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't spend any time on the big highways. For those that know Southern California, I didn't spend any time on the 405, for example. That would A, be a very bad idea, and B, probably illegal. But I stuck to the one for the vast majority of that ride, and then otherwise, rural streets and mountain roads. There's a great route, and you can find published, accounts by folks that do bicycle traveling for a living that tell you how to get around without messing with the freeways too much.
Yeah, I have to in Southern California. And that'd be interesting because you present an awfully large target on a bicycle.
That's true. Yeah. So my hope has always been that by being a pretty tall cyclist, right? I'm 6'8" and I have a 68 frame road cycling bike. The people will see me in advance, and when I'm biking at night, I try to wear all the reflective stuff.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, you kind of, in contrast to some other sports where you can really lose yourself in the flow, and I try to do that when I'm cycling because that's where you really get kind of your peak performance. You also do have to stay kind of alert. Traffic and squirrels and whatever else might come into the road gets pretty important, especially when you're out there by yourself going a long way and maybe riding at night. So thankfully, all's well so far. Yeah,
very good. So are you still doing it?
I haven't done anything that long since then. I've done, for those that like to cycle, I've done some randonneuring, right? So you go out and do 250, 300 miles. Lately, I haven't done as much of that. I still like to go out and ride, but I haven't done the super long stuff lately.
So you said doing random nearing?
Yeah. It's one of those where it's not a race per se, but
right.
They give you a route sheet and say, hey, this is the route, and you just go out and do it. And it's generally you need to finish within this amount of time.
Got it.
But there's no water stops along the way. There's no power bar, Cliff Bar stations.
Right.
You go out and you put a couple 20s in your pocket, and if you get hungry, you try to find a place to get some food, and you try to refill your water bottle at 7-Eleven or at a local church or wherever you can find. And so it's a very kind of a self-sustainable type of approach.
Very cool. All right. Well, I hope people were fascinated as I was by the bike conversation. But I mean, it's an amazing accomplishment. But I think to the point, back to sales, just to sort of wrap that part up, is just that, as I talk about it, to me, that's a matter of character and preparation. I mean, I don't do 500-mile rides. I do half marathons. But, there's preparation. There's always moments in anything you're doing where there's this urge to quit or, give less of yourself than you think you have. And we're in a tough business. It requires that we have persistence and resilience, grit, if you talk about it. And it's not talked about enough. And I think part of understanding, this whole character thing is actually being conscious about defining your values and what you're trying to accomplish and your goals and what you stand for. And it comes out when you talk to people. It
does. And I think, for me, at least, and at some level, it's not about the cost. But for me, I've always had success. Like if I want to do a lot of running in a given year, like I did last year, then I'll sign up for all the runs throughout the entire year before the year starts, right? So I'd sign up for 5 or 6 marathons and stagger them out every 2 months. And there's something about just signing up and saying, I'm going to show up to these. And sure, each one costs, $30, $40, $50. So there's some financial commitment, but it's more about just the mental commitment of like, I'm going to do this. And I think for most of us, it's pretty hard to back out after that, even if you've only told yourself. I mean, I think from an accountability standpoint, it can be helpful to tell somebody else, right? Tell your wife or your husband or some of your good friends, hey, I'm going to do this. And that makes it even harder.
Or sign up with somebody.
To back out, even if you're to. Yeah, but the best way is to sign up. And I think on the sales side, it's saying to yourself, to your team, to the sales director or manager, I'm signing up to hit quota this month. And these are the deals I'm signing up to get. And if I can get X percent of them, then I'm going to get to my quota goal. And that's hard to do. I mean, all of us are pretty tempted at the end of the day to keep things a surprise because it is fun it's fun to surprise people, right? It's fun to walk in the office and be like, I got this deal. I hadn't even told you that I was working on it, but I did. I did all the work by myself in the back room, and the deal's closed, and here's the check, and it's so awesome, and everyone has a big smile, and they're just amazed that you did it because they didn't even know about it. But that's pretty rare, actually. And so it's much better to have kind of a no surprise or a limited surprise culture, I think, in sales, and be pretty transparent about, hey, this is what I'm trying to do. These are the steps I'm trying to take, and who's with me, right? Who can help me in that journey to getting the customer? Because if everyone's constantly working on a big surprise, and surprises are rare, that's why they surprise us, and none of them come through, then we've had a bad sales experience, right? Yes. We might miss our number this month or this quarter. So, right. I've heard, people a lot smarter than I am talk about kind of like, let's not have surprises, right? Let's try to have some transparency about what we're working on. And from transparency comes naturally accountability, because we're all talking about the same things. Yeah.
No, and ideally your pipeline should be reasonably predictable with upside potential. And if upside happens, fantastic, right? So, all right, Brandon, been great. Thank you very much. So tell people how they can find out more about Cirrus Insight and connect with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're at Cirrus Insight, which is CIRRUS Insight.com. So Cirrus, like the high wispy cloud. Last year, people referred to us a couple different ways. One referred to us as Citrus Insight. And so we made a video that said we went into the orange juice business, which was kind of fun. And then my favorite one last year was someone introduced me as coming from Cirrus Insight, which I thought sounds like maybe the next big company, right?
Yeah.
Insight into the circuit industry or something. I was like, that sounds like a fun job, whatever it is. But no, we're with Cirrus Insight. We're software as a service. We serve sales teams that use Gmail or Outlook that want power tools in the inbox and the calendar, like email tracking and appointment scheduling and email templates, et cetera. And we have a really world-class connector with Salesforce.com. My co-founder, Ryan Huff, is an expert in that platform. I'm easy to reach by email, Brandon@CirrusInsight.com, certainly on LinkedIn all the time. So we're open book, and we're in Knoxville, Tennessee. So if anyone's ever out here visiting Great Smoky Mountains National Park, or out for a UT game, or out to visit the secret city of Oak Ridge, Tennessee, which was part of the Manhattan Project,
All right.
then look us up, give us a shout, and you're welcome to stop by the office and hang out with the team.
All right. Well, Brandon, thank you very much. And friends, thank you for spending this time with us today. Make sure you come back, join us for the next great episode of Accelerate. So thanks for joining me. Until next time, this is Andy Paul. Good selling, everyone.